Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here, got another Master Duel deck profile for you guys today. Today we're going to be taking a look at a deck that you've probably seen a few times on the ladder. It's another kind of one of those infamous decks in a similar vein to like Eldlich and Drytron. In that we've all gone up against it, and we don't always like particularly going up against it, but it's going to be Numerons. We're going to be taking a look at a Numeron deck today. Yep, when I'm not opening secret packs, I usually just open some Stalwart Force, and I recently opened my third Numeron Network, so I decided to go ahead and build the deck out because I already had pretty much everything else I needed for it. The only thing I really had to craft was a Terraforming. I'm fine crafting this because I can put it in my Sky Striker deck as well. Again, my general rule of thumb for crafting ultra rares is, can I use it in more than one deck, and does it have potential future use for decks? So staples mostly. I just generally like to craft staples, so yep, I was fine crafting a Terraforming for this deck. So Numerons, right? Again, most of us are probably pretty familiar with them, but for those who aren't too savvy to how it works, basically the idea is that we're going to want to activate our Numeron Network field spell. We can do this by activating it from the hand, just by drawing it. We can also activate it from the deck with our Numeron Wall. We can search for it with Planet Pathfinder as well as Terraforming. We're also playing a copy of Piri Reis Map to search the Planet Pathfinder. Basically, one of a lot of avenues to have access, or sorry, not the Planet Pathfinder, the Numeron Wall, sorry. The Piri Reis Map gets the Numeron Wall, but yeah, we just want to have a lot of different ways to gain access to our Numeron Network, as this is how we're going to defeat our opponent. So let's go ahead and break down the deck and extra deck card by card real quick, and then we'll go ahead and start talking about how the deck itself works. So here in the monsters, we've got a PSY-Frame Driver, 1 DD Crow, 3 Numeron Wall, 3 Maxx, 2 PSY-Frame Gamma, 3 Ash Blossom, 3 Planet Pathfinder, 2 Lava Golem, 3 Gadarla, the Mystery Dust Kaiju, 1 Harpie's Feather Duster, 1 Terraforming, 3 Lightning Storm, 3 Numeron Calling, 1 Piri Reis Map, 3 Numeron Network, 2 Twin Twister, 2 Forbidden Droplet, and 3 Infinite Impermanence. Now, the extra deck here is rather rudimentary. It's going to be mostly just a few cards with a lot of copies of those cards. We've got 3 number 1 Numeron Gate Ekam, 1 number 2 Numeron Gate Devi. Sorry, we have 3 of each of those. 3 number 3 number Gate Trini, and 3 number 4 Numeron Gate Catvari. We're also playing 2 C number 1 Numeron Chaos Gate Sunya, as well as an Apollousa as well. So how does this deck work, right? What is a Numeron all about? Well, Numeron is like the core definition of a going second deck. So you might ask, what defines a deck that wants to go first versus a deck that wants to go second? Well, most decks kind of by default do want to go first because we can establish our plays with less chances of getting negated. Usually when opponents set up, most decks will set up like some sort of negate or floodgate to prevent the opponent from doing anything, make their plays harder to get off. So generally speaking, going best is first because you only really have to worry about hand traps, right? But some decks really need to go second in order for their strategies to go off well. Decks we've played in the past that I would define as going second decks include Sky Striker and Pure Zodiac, right? Because Sky Striker really wants to go second so that they can Hayate during their first turn and set up their graveyard. A potential Kaiju Surge, set up Array if they need to. That Hayate is a very important, crucial setup step for their strategy. Also getting the Hayate attack to then go for game with access code the next turn is fairly important, so that's why Sky Striker likes to go second. Similarly with Pure Zodiac, attacking with the Zodiacs is fairly important to their strategy for going into Zeus, as well as just generally setting up their board as well. We saw that a lot when we played Pure Zodiac, and particularly in preparation for the Xyz Festival. Another kind of defining feature of a lot of decks that like to go second is that they tend to play a lot of hand traps. Again, Sky Striker, Pure Zodiac, remember those decks played a lot of hand traps. So Numeron, why does Numeron like to go second? Well, Numeron likes to go second because of the effects of these number gates here, or these Numeron gates rather. So they can't be destroyed by battle, and at the end of the damage step after they battle a monster, you can detach material and double the attack of all other Numeron, or all Numeron monsters on the field. So Numeron Network is able to activate a Numeron spell from the deck, and also while it's on the field. Another important thing to note is that Numeron Exceeds monsters can activate their effects without detaching materials. So basically we activate Numeron Gates, which activates Numeron Calling. Numeron Calling says if we have a Numeron Network in our field spell zone and have no monsters on our board, we can summon one of each of the 4 Numeron Gates. So we get one of each 1, 2, 3, and 4, which all have the exact same effect. And the idea is that if our opponent has a monster, we can attack with the first one for 1,000, then they all go up to 2,000, attack with the second one for 2,000, then they all go up to 4,000, attack the monster with the 4,000, 4,000. This is usually enough to destroy the monster by this point, which point all 4 Numeron Gates have 8,000 attack points, and then the 4th and final one can just attack your opponent directly for game. So Numeron is a going second deck and OTK deck, another kind of deck that likes to go second because, well, they win the game on their first turn by attacking. So that's what Numeron is apt to do here. So what does this mean? This means we have to design the rest of our deck based around the idea that we are wanting to go second, right? Let's go and take a look at some ways that we have done that. There's a lot of different ways, basically the whole rest of the deck, outside of like the Numeron engine, as well as the Numeron Wall, which again can fetch our Numeron Gate directly from the deck. So yeah, aside from our Numeron engine and things that like search the field spell, like Planet Pathfinder and Terraforming, as well as again Piri Reis to search the Numeron Wall, everything else is designed around going second. We're playing a lot of hand traps, the usual suspects like Maxx and Ash. We're not playing Nibiru here because we don't want to put the Nibiru on our board, because if we have monsters out, then we can't use Numeron Calling's effect to attack for game. Other hand traps that we are playing that we don't normally see in most decks, we're playing the PSY-Frame Gamma, which I typically don't like to run in like Trizu and other meta decks kind of like that. I see some players use it, and I don't think it's wrong necessarily, but sure, the ability to negate any monster effect is really strong. The only problem is that you have to get the PSY-Frame Driver out as well as play it in your deck in order to use the PSY-Frame Gamma. So you can really only use one of them. I mean, you typically only need one of them, but the other is going to end up being dead after that. The other thing too is that by playing PSY-Frame Driver, this card can end up being a pretty bad draw, especially on your first turn, or if you're top decking looking for an answer or an out. Drawing the PSY-Frame Driver feels pretty bad, so I usually don't play PSY-Frame Gamma, but in such a, deck that's reliant on going second, I do want to play it here. And a lot of the reason I actually want to play it is because not only can we counter our opponent's monster effects that are like trying to advance their board state, but since we're using a lot of hand traps, we can even counter monster effects that would like negate our hand traps. Like if we Maxx and our opponent ashes, we can counter the ash with the PSY-Frame Gamma, so that's pretty nice. So other things that we're playing here that indicate that we like to go second are the Lava Golem and the Kaiju, right? We don't normally see these in a lot of decks, but the reason I like to have them here is to break monsters that are otherwise very difficult to get around. I'm mainly talking about Heralds, right? Like Herald of Perfection, Herald of Ultimateness, as well as like Adamantipator boards with like Dragites and well, mainly the Apollousa and the Boar loads, the negates, the no summoning from extra deck. Lava Golem and the Kaiju go a long ways in order to just get those monsters off the board so that we can actually set our plays up. We can also potentially negate them with things like Droplet and Impermanence. Sure, Impermanence also being another hand trap that we're playing because we like to go second, but just having the option to get rid of them in a way our opponent can't really respond to by tributing them is very, very nice. You can see we're also playing Harpies for the Duster, as well as 3 Lightning Storm and 2 Twin Twister. We really like to have this back row removal because, again, we're going second, so our opponent's going to have the option to set up with a bunch of back row, and we don't want our stuff to get negated, so we obviously want to be able to clear that out as efficiently as possible. Extra deck is again pretty self-explanatory for the most part. The 12 Numerons here are all kind of, obviously they are the main way that we win the game. They're how we OTK here. There are 3 other cards in the extra deck that we use more as fringe options. One being the number C1, the Numeron Gate. You basically stack this on top of number 1, and then you banish all of your monsters. Then during your next standby phase, if your Numeron Network is still on the board, this comes back and deals damage equal to your opponent, or to the opponent equal to the total number of monsters banished. So when is this going to be useful? This is going to be useful for when we are going second and we can get the Numeron set up, but our opponent doesn't have a monster on the board because our our Numeron gates have to battle a monster in order to double attack points. So if we just play the Numeron gate and Calling and just summon them all out, but our opponent doesn't have anything, we attack directly 4 times, but only for 1,000 each. So that's only 4,000 damage. So what you can do is then main phase 2, you stack the C1 on top of the number 1, you banish all of your monsters, and then during your next standby phase, again, if Numeron Network is still on the board, this comes back and deals the remaining damage to kill your opponent in that scenario. So very nice to have for that reason. And then finally, we have an Apollousa here, and the reason we have this is in the rare event that we actually go first. Sometimes we're playing like a mirror match, or you know, another going second deck like Sky Striker and Zodiac, and they win the coin flip and they actually make us go first. So in this scenario, you know, most of the time we'll probably end up just passing our first turn if we're forced to go first, but this does give us an option to, you know, turn 1 still set up the Numeron Network into the Numeron Calling, and then we just link all 4 of our gates into an Apollousa here to give us some of disruption during our opponent's turn. So yeah, there's not really a whole lot else to say about Numerons, honestly. It's pretty much just like stay alive and yeah, just win on your first turn, which is going to be the second turn of the duel. There are a few flex spots in here, and ideally, you know, this Kaiju should probably be Gamma Seal, because Gamma Seal only has 2,200 attack points, but honestly, I don't have other plans to use Gamma Seal at the moment, and even though it's a super rare, I'm like, yeah, getting low-ish, I mean, what I would consider low-ish on super rare craft points, so I decided to just go ahead and stick with the good old Moth here. There could also be different hand traps to use. I have the 1 DD Crow as kind of like, this was a bit of a flex spot for me personally in my build. I have considered using Droll and Lockbird, like maybe a couple copies of those instead of DD Crow and, I don't know, 1 other random card in here. Because, yeah, Droll and Lockbird is actually really, really good in this format right now. I think it's a lot better than some people are maybe giving it credit for. But DD Crow is also really good against, like, the Tri-Zoo, and, I mean, it's just a good hand trap in general. So, I had the 1 open spot, so I decided to put in the 1 DD Crow there, but I see some builds not using 3 Lightning Storm plus the Harpies. I think all builds should probably be using that, because again, we're going second deck and clearing those back row is so important. I don't know that you necessarily need Twin Twister as well. That may be a bit too much, but again, I just like having the option for back row removal. So as always with these deck profiles, I have a few games to show you guys to kind of show how the deck works in motion, as opposed to just talking about the list here. So let's go ahead and take a look at a few of these games. Alright, let's hop right into the first of these replays here. This one is actually going to end up being a mirror match, which is going to be pretty interesting. It's actually one of the more back and forth matchups you tend to have with this deck as Numerons. Yeah, so we get we get an okay starting hand, right? We have a Numeron Wall, as well as, well, I mean, it's pretty good, actually. We have a Numeron Wall and Ash and Harpies and Lightning Storm. That's actually fairly good. So yeah, I see an engage here, so initially I think I'm playing in Sky Strikers, but then the Planet Pathfinder comes down and I realize, oh, this is actually kind of the Sky Striker variant of Numerons, which I didn't really talk about in the deck profile, but this is a variant of Numerons that you can play pretty easily here. You can run the Sky Striker cards as sort of engine to thin out your deck and potentially search your cards more efficiently. So opponent is doing the turn 1 play that I mentioned in the deck profile, where since we forced them to go first, since it's the mirror match, they're able to still set up their Numeron Network with the Planet Pathfinder. They're still going to activate Calling, get 1 of each, and go into a 4 material Apollousa, which is going to be a bit of an issue for me, as I'm not now going to have a much harder time actually searching my Numeron Network. Honestly, if I were a bit more well-versed in this matchup, I, probably should have just, done this in response to the materials coming down. But we have a Lightning Storm, so I'll just use that to get rid of the Apollousa. I'll Harpies for the rest of their Numeron Network, because obviously I know how important that is for this matchup, right? And then we can activate our own Numeron Network. So now I'm going to do the play that I also mentioned in the deck profile, where I get my play off, but I can't OTK because my opponent doesn't have a monster on the board. So I'm going to hit them for 4,000 during the battle phase, and then main phase 2, I'm going to overlay my number 1 gate into the number C1, the gate Sunya. So at this point, I'm feeling pretty good. You know, I'm going to banish my board. I'll set my Piri Reis Map and my Numeron Calling as kind of bluffs to just kind of psych my opponent out. But yeah, so right now I'm all poised. I'm all set up during my standby phase to have my number C1 come back and then deal 5,000 damage to my opponent, which will be enough to lethal them. So I'm also pretty confident because, again, I know this is a mirror match. So even if they happen to draw a Numeron Network, sure, they can summon the 4, hit me for 4,000, basically do the exact same thing I did. But the thing to know about the number C1 here is that it comes out during your next standby phase after this card is banished. So mine's going to come back first, and then before my opponent has a chance to come back in, I will secure the win. So again, I'm pretty confident in this setup that I'm going to be able to win here. But as we pass it to our opponent, they're actually going to drop Harpie's Feather Duster, which might not seem like an issue at first, right? They're still just going to, you know, do what I just mentioned. They're not going to be able to win. I'll still get another turn, right? Well, don't forget with number C1 over here, yeah, it'll come back during the standby phase, but it only inflicts the damage if Numeron Network is in my field zone. Not just the field zone, but my field zone specifically. So that's actually a huge problem for me, because now again, I'll get my number C1 back during the standby phase, but I am not going to be able to actually win the game on my opponent's turn. So yeah, I'm going to have to hope that I draw another Numeron Network, although that actually won't even be enough here because I'll have a monster on the board, so I won't be able to use the Numeron Calling. You can see my opponents, as I mentioned, going for their number C1 play as well, so I'm going to have to hope for something that can destroy my opponent's Numeron Network. It's pretty much the only way I can survive here. But alas, we draw a Lava Golem. Our number C1 is going to come back. Again, not do the damage because I don't have the Numeron Network on board. We have to pass back to our opponent. I mean, I guess I could have attacked, but I mean, either way, my opponent's going to be able to win here. So, yeah, even though I lost this game, it's a mirror match, and it showed off a lot of the kind of intricacies of how the deck works in alternative ways as opposed to just smacking your opponent with the 4 Numeron gates, right? So I figured that was a pretty good match to show off. Also, like I mentioned at the beginning of the game, the Numeron mirror match actually does tend to be one of the more like back and forth matchups. Most games with this deck, I will admit, are fairly straightforward. It's one of the reasons the deck is so popular because you just, I mean, it's simple, right? You play the Numeron Network, you play your Numeron monsters, you attack, and then you win. But yeah, this is one of those matchups where there is a bit more you have to kind of consider. So, okay, let's go ahead and take a look at some other games with the deck. Alright, let's go ahead and fire up this next duel here. Now this one, I believe, if I recall correctly, this one is actually going to be against Emancipator, which is one of the, you know, the last deck I just played, so it'll be interesting to see this matchup here. So we got a really good starting hand. We have PSY-Frame, Imperm, and Numeron Network. Our opponent's going to start with a Seeker. I'm going to respond with Maxx because we all know how much Maxx, you know, really hurts this matchup. However, my opponent does have an Ash, which is a bit annoying, but I also have the PSY-Frame Gamma, which, as I mentioned in the deck profile, can potentially negate hand traps and negates any monster effect. But look at this, our opponent's got a Called By to actually banish the Maxx. They're really determined to get their effect off. I'm not going to let them, though. I'm going to throw down Chain Link number 6 here for Infinite Impermanence. So, like, what a back and forth over this Emancipator Seeker, right? But I really didn't want to let it resolve, especially as my opponent started to use more and more resources from their hand in order to ensure that it resolved. That made me realize, and it confirmed as they played more cards from their hand, that, oh, they're really banking on this Seeker excavation in order to actually get their plays going, right? So I want to stop this at pretty much all costs at this point. So yeah, as you can see, it started with Seeker, I chained to Maxx, Ash negated the C, I negated the Ash, Called By negated the C, but I negated the Seeker. So our Maxx is not going to resolve. It's a bit unfortunate, but neither is their Emancipator Seeker, and they only have 2 other cards left in their hands, so I'm pretty sure they're not going to be able to do a whole lot, if anything, here. And there goes the C. Then we get our PSY-Frames out. We get their Ash. Our C is negated. And then finally, their Seeker is negated. And they're going to have to pass there, as like my suspicions were confirmed. They don't have a whole lot of other options here. So we draw the Planet Pathfinder, so I'm actually going to play it before I play the Numeron Network to bait out a possible hand trap. They have an Ash, not that that affects Numeron Network or Calling anyway, but Yeah, this confirms our opponent's only got one other card left in hand. I guess it could be a Nibiru technically, but odds of that are very, very low. We're going to drop the Numeron Network. Our opponent knows what that means. Yep, we're going to summon each of the 4 gates. Gate number 1 with 1,000 attack would attack into Seeker. I'd take 200. They all go up to 2,000. Gate number 2 with 2,000 would attack over Seeker, inflicting 800 damage and putting my other 2 gates to 4,000. They would both attack directly for 4,000 each, thus lethaling my opponent. So that is how the rest of that game would have played out there. But yeah, it's kind of interesting, right? Because we play so many hand traps, we can kind of get in these very back and forth hand trap wars with some of our other opponents. But another advantage of this deck, though, that we're able to not only get our OTK off, but because we play so much disruption, it's really hard for our opponent to be able to establish their setup a lot of the time, too. So, okay, yep, let's go ahead and take a look at the next one. Okay, next opponent here. This time we're going to be up against a Drytron player. So, this is going to be kind of interesting here. This game in particular will show off some of the ways that we can stop our opponent's boards from negating. You can see we got another really good opening hand in terms of hand traps. We have a Maxx, a PSY-Frame Gear, and a DD Crow here. Opponent's going to start off with Pot of Prosperity. I thought maybe they might have been Eldlich or something at first, but they reveal themselves to be Drytron fairly quickly here, with including a Vanity's Ruler, which is interesting. They're going to get the Preparation of Rites. Unfortunately, we don't have an Ash, otherwise that'd be really good for the prep there, but well, it happens. They'll Cyber Emergency, and then as soon as they activate Nova, I'm going to respond with Maxx. Our opponent's got an Orange Herald, which would normally be super annoying, but once again, PSY-Frame Gamma is going to come very much in handy with the ability to negate any monster effect, including another hand trap like Orange Herald. So our Maxx is going to resolve here, which against Drytron, as we all know, is very, very good. Opponent did discard an Eva as well, which is a bit annoying here. Now, I do have to point this out here. I do make a misplay due to me misreading Eva. When Eva activates, I chain and target it with DD Crow because for some reason I misread this semicolon as just a comma, right? And I thought that I didn't see the banishing happening as part of the cost. I thought it was part of the effect as I, read over Eva here. So I thought, oh, okay, I'll DD Crow and I'll banish the Eva from grave because it's the only fairy in their grave, and then they can't banish, so they won't be able to search, right? No, like I said, I misread this semicolon as the comma. I just somehow missed that, so that's why I pitched the DD Crow there. It is actually a bit of an unfortunate misplay because DD Crow can be useful for disrupting other parts of the Drytron combo, so we're not going to be able to have access to that, which is going to be a bit too bad, but we do still have the Maxx live here, so as our opponent's going to continue to combo off, we're still going to be able to get at least some form of disruption, quote-unquote disruption, in the form of draws to let us draw into other disruption. So yeah, opponent's definitely just going for it at this point. I'm going to Ash this Ben 10 here, although it's not going to really end up mattering because they still have the Diviner anyway, but I'll go ahead and prevent them. I kind of want to, ideally prevent them from getting access to their Herald, but like I said, they had the Diviner of the Herald anyway, so ashing the Ben 10 ultimately didn't make a huge difference. Opponent is going to then Ritual Summon their Herald of Perfection. But we drew a Kaiju, so that's very, very nice. So now this Herald, it doesn't really matter anymore, right? They could have like 5, 6, a million fairies in hand. But the Kaiju tributes in order to special summon itself to the field. And it's not like an activated effect, the tribute just happens and then it's summoned. So it's kind of like how, if Herald of Perfection can't negate a Cyber Dragon special summon because the special summon just happens. It's not necessarily like an activated effect, right? Well, Kaijus are similar. You just tribute the monster and then the special summon just happens. So yep, we're going to go ahead and just tribute our opponent's Herald for the Kaiju, and our opponent's just going to concede at that point. So it's always, it's you think what you will about Numerons, right? But isn't it very satisfying to just see a Drytron player concede is the instant they lose their Herald like that? But, yep, nope, so the rest of the game plan there was then to obviously summon the Planet Pathfinder, tribute it for the Numeron Network, activate that, activate the Calling, get our 4 Exceeds. Our opponent's got a attack mode monster in the form of the Kaiju, so we can guarantee just go ahead and smack our opponent's monsters with our gates and then just attack for lethal there. So, okay, we've got one more game. Let's go ahead and jump into that. Okay, final game of the video here. This one's going to be against Thunder Dragons. And yeah, you can see we got a very, very nice opening hand. We have Maxx, Ash, Twin Twister, and not one but two Numeron Network. Having access to two Numeron Network in the opening hand is always really nice because usually our opponent, it's not uncommon for them to destroy the first one in response to it being activated. So it's nice to just have the backup option, right? It's also nice to open Numeron Network itself and not have to rely on like Terraforming or Numeron Wall or Planet Pathfinder, because those can all get ashed, but the Numeron Network cannot get ashed, so that's always nice. Speaking of ash, I'm going to ash their Allure of Darkness if they can't draw more cards here. They're going to activate the Thunder Dragon Dark. I don't really care about that. That's fine. They do get the Thunder Dragon Colossus off here. Now, one thing to note about this Thunder Dragon Colossus, right, is that it can prevent itself from being destroyed by battle or card effects by banishing Thunders from the graveyard. So, it's actually a really good thing that I drew this Kaiju here, because if I didn't and I had to attack this, the Thunder Dragon Colossus, I'm trying to think, actually, would that still be lethal? So 1 and 2, I would hit for 1,000, then 2,000, then I'd have 4. 4,000 minus 26 is 14, go up to 8,000. 8,000 minus 26 is 54, so 54 plus 14 is 78. So no, I'm actually 200 short of lethal with this Thunder Dragon Colossus here. So it's a good thing I drew this Kaiju, because the Kaiju has more attack, but I can run over it and then you know, destroy it and then attack directly for 8,000 for lethal. And I actually almost didn't think about this mid-game. As you can see, I haven't summoned the Kaiju yet. I just Twin Twistered the one back row, which ended up being an Imperm. Good thing I Twin Twistered that. And then just went straight into the Numerons. But as I was summoning these, that's when I remembered Thunder Dragon Colossus's effect here, and I realized, wait, if that thing doesn't die from the first attack, that might not be lethal. So I didn't do the math right then and there. I just decided to summon the Kaiju, or I'll let the game resume so I can show you. Yeah, I decided to end up summoning the Kaiju anyway just to be safe. But yeah, no, I did the math. I think I did it right just now, that it would be 7,800, which would put me 200 short of lethal. So good thing I did that there. Yep, as soon as we move into the battle phase, our opponent concedes. It is kind of a little bit rare, actually, that you actually get the, you know, full damage to the. That's really satisfying to watch, but in my experience, everybody just concedes as soon as you either activate the Numeron Network or enter the battle phase. So, yeah, okay, let's go ahead and take one more look at the deck before we sign off here. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for watching. I super appreciate it, as always. Yeah, I know Numerons is kind of like Eldlich in that it's not a super popular deck, and like, oh, you know, everybody hates running into Numeron on the ladder. This might be another one of those videos where I see all those comments where people talk about how I've turned to the dark side, like on that Eldlich video. I thought those were hilarious, by the way. But again, you know, kind of like Eldlich, I like to make the argument that, like, well, it's nice to play these decks, or at least, like, do research on them, just to make sure that we know how to play against them, to figure out their choke points, and figure out, you know, how they win so we can stop them from winning in turn. So, plus, I just like messing around with different decks. You know, like Eldlich, I probably won't be playing really much more Numeron on the channel after this video, because I feel like the games aren't very interesting to watch, right? It's just me, you know, playing. I mean, I don't know, the hand trap back and forth is pretty nice, but if you really want to see more Numeron, let me know in the comments, but you know, going forward, I'm not planning on playing it too much more here on the channel. But yep, thank you as always for watching to the end, and especially thank you if you're commenting and or subscribing. I always love to see that, but even if you're not, I just appreciate you being here either way. So yep, this is Hexlex signing out. I hope you have a fantastic day.